Hi everybody, in this video I'm going to look at part 4 from the use of English in the advanced exam. So last week we did part 1, part 2, part 3 and today just a look at part 4, the sentences where you have to change the form of the sentence to have the same significance of the second sentence. Most people say this part is the most difficult, so I'll just share my screen and we can look at the exercise first. So this is the book you can see on the left. It's the advanced exam book, okay? So it's just the book that I use at the moment. And we're going to look at part 4, which is continuation from last week. So it's on page 78, if my computer reacts. Okay, so I'm going to go to page 78, which is part 4. And at the beginning, you can see the instructions for the exercise. So for people who do not know the exercise, and this is the first time, take your time to look at the instructions here. So for questions 25 to 30, complete the second sentence so that it has a similar meaning to the first sentence using the word given. So this is the word they give. So it's necessary, the second sentence, to have a similar meaning to the first sentence, okay? But it's necessary to use the word that they give. In this case, for the example, it is on. You must use between 3 and 6 words. That's the key, okay? So between 3 and 6 words, including the word they give, okay? So this is the example 0. James would only speak to the head of the department alone. And then you have James with the blank or the space to the head of the department alone, and you only have on. Okay, so I'm going to show you in a different page my if I can move this here. Yeah, there we go. So in Paint I have opened the document already, and here is the example. So I just want to show you a bit of advice how to do this. So the first one is, I'll change the color here to orange so we can all see. So James, no problem, that exists in the first and it exists in the second, here and here, so you can eliminate that option. The head of the department, no problem. Cabeza, the head of the department, exists in the 2. Alone is like only or solo, no problem, it exists. To, speak to, okay? So here we have speak, maybe that's a little clue. So probably we need to include speak here, possibly, because the preposition is associated with speak, and would only speak to. Okay, so it's a bit difficult, and to be honest, it was difficult for me at the beginning, and the key here really is on. We need to think of possible connections with only and on, okay? And basically the answer they give here, the key is insist on. And probably in Spanish it's very similar, but it requires a little thinking. And also, after this preposition and this structure, insist on, it's necessary the gerundio. Okay, for example, insist on going, insist on meeting, insist on having. So always after insist on, it's the ing. Okay, insist on meeting. And that's what we have here. So James insisted on speaking to the head of the department alone. Okay, so I'll just show you the answer. And you can see at the bottom of the screen, that's the answer, insisted on speaking. So James insisted on speaking to the head of the department alone. Okay, so that's an example for part, the example, should I say. So then we begin. Okay, and we have 25, 26, 27. So the first one is, do you mind if John joins us for the meeting? Okay, do you mind is como, do you care, is it important, and do you mind if John joins us for the meeting? So do you have, that's the structure for the second sentence, do you have something us for the meeting? Okay, and the word they give is to. So I recommend that you maybe try this exercise yourself first, and you can press pause on the video, and then now I'm going to show you my notes. Okay, so if we go back here to the document, and I have opened in Paint as well, part 2. So I'm going to show you my advice or my way to approach or to do this activity. Okay, so it's very similar from the example. And if we go back again, so we have for the meeting in the second sentence, and we have for the meeting in the first sentence. So we can eliminate the two. Us, we have in the first, and we also have in the second. And now we have to calculate, do you mind is a different structure from do you have. And basically John, we probably need to include also John here in the sentence at some position or at some point. And also the verb joins, we need to include in the sentence at some point. So again, from your instinct, you need to calculate all the words. So do you have something, John, join us for the meeting? And the word that we need is to. So for me, the only possibility is, do you have an objection to? Okay, so this is the answer really. That's the first idea I have, an objection to. And I'll just make that a bit smaller so you can see it. Do you have an objection? And always after this structure, an objection to. Okay, and that is possible. Do you have an objection to John joining us? Okay, so for me, that fits very, very well. I'll make it smaller so you can see it. But I think we need to change one more thing. An objection is maybe one specific, okay? But we don't have one specific specification. So it's just in general, okay? So when it's in general, do you have any objection to John joining us for the meeting? For me, that is the more appropriate answer with any, because it's just general. Do you mind in general? Okay. Any objection to John joining us for the meeting? So that is 25. Okay. And if we move to 26, well, in my opinion, for 25, it's a little tricky in relation to the detail of any, and hopefully you know the structure object to. Okay. So I object to your idea or your proposal. So that is really the structure, object to. And if you know this structure, it's easy. But if you don't know it, it's more complicated. Okay, so let's move to 26. And we have Dan, the subject, abandoned in the past simple. Okay, so we have the past simple. We have Dan as the subject. His is the possession. His studies is the substantivo in the plural. At university. So always we say at university. It's possible in university. So they're very, very similar, at university or in university, because porque, he is the subject, the verb to be in the past simple, and ill is the adjective, like sick. Okay. So the sentence we have in the second, Dan. So here we have the possession with the apostrophe S. So it's something in relation to the possession of Dan. His studies at university. And let me just change the color of the line so we continue the same. So we can eliminate Dan. We can eliminate because it exists in the second sentence, but be careful because we need to remember the possession. His studies we can eliminate because it exists in the two sentences. And at university also we can eliminate because it exists in the two sentences. Okay, we need to include abandoned. We need to include probably because, and possibly this structure as well, ill. So the only possibility with possession in this sentence is related to ill. So ill is the adjective, and we need to transform the adjective to the substantivo because it's possession. And when you have possession, it's normally the substantivo. Brian's pen, Brian's book, Dan's holiday. So here it's exactly the same. So the substantivo of ill is illness. Okay, so I think that's perfect beginning. That's a perfect start. Dan's illness Now we have the word resulted, so it's the past simple, but you need to think of a possible combination with resulted, and the typical combination with resulted is resulted in. Okay, so Dan's illness resulted in, that's normally the typical structure with the preposition and result, and it's the past resulted in. Okay, so we can eliminate in the second sentence, we can eliminate ill, and resulted in is probably a substitution for because. And now we need to think of abandon. So in the first sentence, it's the verb in the past simple, but in the second sentence, I think we need to change. And also, he was ill, I think we can eliminate because it's a substitution for Dan's illness. So basically, we have abandon. The verb abandon in the past, we need to substitute or to place in the second sentence. Dan's illness resulted in probably the substantivo again, and the substantivo is abandonment. And let me just check the spelling, is abandonment. I'm going to move it here to the text so we can see clearly. Okay, so that's the correct spelling. It's a bit difficult for the spelling, but it is correct. Okay, so the abandonment, and we need the article, the abandonment. Okay, and finally, we need one extra word because it doesn't make sense at the moment. So Dan's illness resulted in the abandonment, his studies. We need a word to connect abandonment and his studies. And for me, the only possibility, and probably the same in other languages, is abandonment of. Okay? So Dan's illness resulted in the abandonment of his studies at university. For me, that's a very fluid, very comfortable second sentence. And yes, it has the same similar significance as 26. Dan abandoned his studies at university because he was ill. Dan's illness resulted in the abandonment of his studies at university. Okay? Possibly, you can change the with his. Maybe that's another possibility. You could say his abandonment, but I think that is comfortable at the moment. Okay? So that's 26, and you can see the structure is very similar. It's necessary to calculate every word that you have in the first sentence with the words that you have in the second sentence. Okay, so let's move to 27. As soon as, that's a very good structure. As soon as, I'm going to identify it. The tennis players, so that's the substantive, that's the subject, okay? The verb is to go. In the past, it's went. Preposition is onto, and that's very typical for the court. So you go onto the court. Court is the pista, the tennis, okay? So that's the detail that you need to be careful. And remember, it started raining. So in relation to the weather, in English, always we have it. It is sunny, it is cloudy, it is raining, and here it's exactly the same. But also we have the verb started raining, okay? This 27 is very, very difficult. And there's no easy clue or there's no easy way to do this. I think this is quite proficient. And if you get this correct, you deserve a lot of credit, and it's a very good sentence to get correct. Okay, so let's continue with the same structure as before. So onto the court, we can eliminate. Okay, it started raining is exactly the same as the second sentence and the first sentence. We can eliminate and forget, almost forget about this. And now we have the tennis players. So we need to find the position for the tennis players in the second sentence. And we also need a substitution for as soon as. And we have this structure had, which is the verb tener in the past had. Okay. And there is a structure in English, and I'm going to show you here. No sooner had I gone to the cinema, my friend called me on the telephone. Okay, that's a very advanced structure, and it really means emphasis on the moment, like as soon as I had gone, to the cinema, my friend called. So it's a substitution for as soon as I had gone. And it's quite advanced. And if you can include that in your writing or in your speaking and recognize it in listening, it's a very, very good structure. So no sooner had. Okay? And here it's exactly the same. So we will say no sooner had, and it's not me, it's not you, the subject are the tennis players. Okay, so let me change that again. So no sooner had, sorry, we lost the screen, so I'll go back. No sooner had, and the tennis players are the subject of the sentence. That's the majority of the sentence. So no sooner had the tennis players. Let me see if I can change the color this time. Yeah, okay, perfect. No sooner had the tennis players. Now we can eliminate as soon as, because we have the structure of no sooner had. We can eliminate the tennis players because we have the tennis players in the second sentence. Now we need to calculate went. Okay, so remember it's from the verb to go. And here we need to enter in the correct form. And because we have had, I think we need the participle, like the past perfect. Okay, remember the past perfect is the period in the past, followed usually by an action past simple. And in this sentence, we have the past simple started. Okay, so remember the past perfect had plus participle is usually in the moment in the past period when you have another action after, and usually in the past simple. And this is the same here. Past simple is it started. So the verb to go needs to be the participle and gone. Okay, so no sooner had the players gone onto the court than, okay, and sooner, this is the structure. So sooner is connected also with than. So that's the substitution for had. Okay, a little difficult for sure. Very, very difficult. 27, I think, is the most difficult so far. Okay, so that is the third one. And now if we go back to the screen, so there's the three again, 25, 26, 27. Do you mind if John joins us for the meeting? Do you have any objection to John joining us for the meeting? Dan abandoned his studies at university because he was ill. Dan's illness resulted in the abandonment of his studies at university. And 27, as soon as the tennis players went onto the court, it started raining. No sooner had the tennis players gone onto the court than it started raining. So very, very difficult, very good level, and very interesting exercise. Also very different from part 3, very different style from part 3, very different style from part 2, and very different style from part 1. Okay, so it's a very good exam, and it's not easy to prepare, but we need to try and think fluid English and fluent English also. Okay, so 28. First, we'll have to postpone the meeting until next week, as a lot of people are on leave, the manager said. Okay, so the manager said the meeting with the space until the following week, as a lot of people were on leave. And I will open in Paint, the third one. This is a very important exercise, a very important sentence. And I'm going to move this so you can see maybe a little bit better. Maybe I'll move it here, so I'll make it smaller for a minute. Okay. The first thing is to notice, very important, is the quotation. So it's probably connected to direct speech and reported speech. Okay, so we have the quotation here and here, and usually there are rules with the quotation, with the direct speech and the reported speech. The verb in the reported speech usually goes back. Okay, so for example, I speak in the present. I like chocolate. My friend reports my speech. Brian said that he liked chocolate. Okay, that's the general rule. But in this case, maybe it's not relevant, but just to keep in mind. Okay, so let's look at the sentence. We'll have to postpone. So we continue with the same structure. The meeting. So we can eliminate the meeting, and we can eliminate the meeting until next week, as here it has the significance of because. Okay, so as usually in Spanish is como, but here it really means because. Okay, so I'm going to move here. As a lot of people are on leave. And this is very important vocabulary as well. On leave is when you are not working, maybe for illness. So if you cannot work, you are on leave. And it's possible for maternity as well. Okay, so if the person cannot work, on maternity leave, on sick leave, or just in general on leave. Okay, so they're the typical structures with the preposition on in relation to work and for different situations. Okay, possibly illness, possibly maternity, or possible just change of career, or just you want a break, a sabbatical. Okay, a lot of people are on leave. The manager said. Okay, so we can eliminate the manager said because it exists in the first sentence and it exists in the second sentence. On leave, we can eliminate because we have in the second sentence and we have in the first sentence. As we have in the first sentence and we have in the second sentence. In this case, it's because. And a lot of people, we can eliminate in the first sentence because it exists in the second sentence. A lot of people. Okay. Now we have some options remaining. Okay, so let's highlight in blue. We have, until the next week, we can also eliminate because we have in the first sentence and we have in the second sentence. Okay, it's not exactly the same, but it's a very similar meaning. Next and following are practically the same in this. So the significance and the meaning is similar, so we can eliminate the two. Okay, now we have, let's see, we have the verb to be, are on leave, and were on leave. So this calculates and this follows the rule with the reported speech and the directed speech because it changes the tense. So I think we can eliminate the two, are on leave and were on leave. So now we'll have the verb to postpone. Okay, and here we have the verb, the future will have to, but this is tener que in Espanol. It's an obligation, tengo que. Okay, but it's the future and it's we. So that's an obligation. We need to remember it's an obligation. And postpone, we need to find a connection with off. Okay, so very difficult if you do not know the connection. But if you know the phrasal verb or the answer, you have two possibilities. To call off is to cancel. And for me, to put off is to postpone. Okay, so there's two possibilities. To call off and to postpone, for me, are very appropriate in this situation. And I think the second one is more appropriate. So I'm just going to write here cancel for call off. And the second one is more postpone. Okay, so postpone. And I think the second one, put off, is perfect for this situation. So let me put that here. I'll make it smaller so you can keep it in your notes. And there we go. So to call off the meeting or to put off the meeting. Now, how do we put this in the correct position? So the manager said the meeting, and remember, will have is the future simple, but because it's reported speech, we need to change the form of the verb because it's reported speech, and it moves to the direct speech and reported speech. Okay, so here, the manager said the meeting will have to be, that's the best possibility, will have to be is one option, or would have to be postponed or put off. Okay, so that's the substitution for the verb, would have to be put off or called off. So probably the answer, you have a few possibilities, and we will check the answer at the end of the next 29 and 30. We will check the answers, but for me, they're the best options at the moment. So the key really is the phrasal verb to call off or to put off, and that substitutes for postpone. And we will have to also is the substitution here for we will have to. Okay, because it's a meeting. And also here it's I think it's an example of the passive and the active, because we is the subject here. Okay, but that's the general idea for 29. Very difficult also, and the detail is very important in the answers. And these are very, very hard exercises, very difficult. But the only option really is just to practice, continue practicing, okay? And just to be familiar with the structure, because they're very different structures compared to the other exercises, okay? So the next one, as visibility was getting worse and worse, okay? As, no problem, as we can eliminate. Visibility, we can eliminate, okay, because it exists in the first sentence and it exists in the second sentence. Was getting is the verb. We can eliminate in the first, we can eliminate in the second. Worse is the adjective, and that's an expression, worse and worse, peor y peor. So no problem. So that's good news. We can eliminate the majority of the sentence already. Bob and Jane, we can eliminate, and Bob and Jane, we can eliminate. Here, we have to be very, very careful because we have the verb tener, have, but in this example, it is obligation, tener que again, okay, so it's obligation. In the second example, I don't think it's obligation, but just be careful, okay? So to cut short, cortar, corto, is basically cortar, okay? So it's not difficult, but it is a comfortable combination to cut short your holiday, to cut short the meeting, and here it's exactly the same, okay? And their sailing trip, so we can eliminate possession, their, my trip, viaje, but it's your trip, his trip, their trip, okay? And here they have the same, their trip, and it's sailing trip. So we can eliminate the two. And also, cut short exists in the first sentence and it exists in the second sentence, but not had to, okay? So it's connected really to obligation in the first sentence. And here the word is but. And again, from your mind, from your instinct, you really have to find the possible connection. The structure might be similar in English compared to French, compared to Spanish. In every language, this structure may be similar in compared to English, okay? So the best option here is, as visibility was getting worse and worse, Bob and Jane had no choice or had no option, okay? Had no choice, had no option but to. Okay, so let me make that bigger so you can see it perfect. So Jane and Bob and Jane had no choice or no option but to cut. For me, that's perfect. Okay, so let me put in black. And that's it. So Bob and Jane had no choice but, or no option but to cancel or to cut short their trip. A little bit more comfortable than 28 and 27. 29 is maybe more possible, but todavía, still, it's a little tricky, okay? A little difficult. So let's continue to the last option and the last exercise, 30. And we have please tick. So tick is like the action in the box when you fill a form or when you complete a registration. So this is the same. Please tick the box. We can eliminate and we can eliminate. If you, okay, probably we can eliminate and eliminate. Send any information about future events. Okay, so about future events, we can eliminate. And about future eliminate, we can eliminate also. Now we have the word rather. And in English, we have a few possibilities with rather. We have 3 possibilities. Preference, for example, I would rather go to Italy than Spain. So it's my preference. I would like, I would prefer, I would rather. That's the first, is preference. Second one is adjective, or you can say before the adjective, rather happy, rather tired, rather hungry. And in Spanish, it would be bastante. So the second significance of rather is bastante. Also quite in English. It's the same. Bastante, rather or quite. Okay? And let me put here, I would rather is preference. I would rather go, and usually it's the verb plus the infinitive. Okay, they're the 2. I would rather go, and then rather is bastante, and rather than is the third one that's very typical, rather than. So the translation is en lugar de. Okay, and in English we can also say instead of. So rather than is, so let me see if you can see that at the end. Yeah, bastante, quite, and then rather than en lugar de. So it's exactly, it's flexible. You have three possibilities, and in this option, it is maybe preference. So it's related to preference. If you don't want us, and then we have the verb to inform you, is probably the substitution NVR, because here it's the verb inform. I think this would be the substitution to inform you. For me, that's sufficiently similar, so we can eliminate that, and we can eliminate inform. Okay, now we need to substitute the preference I would rather with want. Okay, so please tick this box if you would rather, and remember it's the negative. So we have to say if you would not if you would rather not. So that's the negative for the preference of the verb rather. If you would rather not, and remember it's the infinitive, but it's more complicated here. Okay, so this is the first part. If you would rather not. In the first sentence, we have the subject is us. Okay, the verb is inform, and then the object is you. Okay, but in the second sentence, we have changed the position, and you is the beginning of the sentence, so it's an example of the passive. The first sentence is the active, and the second sentence is the passive, because we have the participle sent, so that's the second part of the passive, and the first part is the auxiliary verb to be, and also the subject. Okay, so we need the subject, we have you, would rather not, and now we need the auxiliary in the passive of the verb to be. And the only possibility is the infinitive, because after rather we have the infinitive. So if you would rather not be sent. Okay, so let me move that here. If you would rather not be sent any information about future events. For me, that's quite difficult, very advanced, and you can see the structure of this exercise is very different from the structure of the part 3 and part 2 and part 1. Okay, so I'm going to show you here. This is the same again, 28, 29, 30, and we have tried to give the answers for each one. Very hard, but I just wanted to show you my advice or my assistance or my help to try and help you to do this exercise. Okay, the last thing I want to say is in relation to documents or material to help you with this exercise. Okay, so I have one document that's very, very good, and this is the name of the document. I think it's available online in a PDF. It's FCE. Okay, it's the first certificate book, but there is sufficient quality and vocabulary in this for the advanced and for different levels. Okay, so this is the book, Keyword Transformation Made Easy. And that's the name of the author or the lady who wrote it. So you can see at the top, that's the name in Google, FCE Keyword Transformation Made Easy. And I recommend this book, PDF. You can continue. There's many, many pages, and they have lots of different good topics about how specifically to do part 4. Okay, so yeah, I recommend that you look for that and try to do it. But I will try to do more of these exercises. So that's complete part 4. Last week we did part 3 from the advanced, part 2 from the advanced, and part 1 from the advanced use of English. Okay, so hopefully I will continue with the reading. We can do part 5, part 6, part 7, and part 8. It's a lot of work. I can do the same, give you some advice, and then maybe we can focus on some listening as well. Part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 of the listening, and also concentrate on the writing and the speaking. Okay, so thank you for listening and watching the video. Stay in contact with the Facebook page, with YouTube. I will put the same videos, and Instagram as well. Enjoy the rest of your day, and Take care and thank you so much. Bye bye.